What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Nate's Favorites. This is the segment on my channel where I talk about some of my favorite movies in great detail. And the reason I'm talking about this movie today is because Shudder recently uploaded this film and all of the subsequent sequels to it, and I have never watched the sequels to this movie. And although I have heard some incredibly negative things about it, I thought it would be the perfect opportunity to watch them all and do a rank list about it. And so that'll be coming in the near future when I watch the rest of them. But I also thought it was the perfect opportunity to revisit a film that I think is so incredibly important in, horror history and essentially developing an entirely new genre of filmmaking in the horror community and space. Because if you think about it, pre Blair Witch, it would be very hard to find anything in sort of the realm of found footage. And this really sort of set off a craze that now you can go on Tubi and watch people that make found footage movies in their backyard. And I think there's something so incredible about that. As someone who went to film school and who has such a respect for people who make movies, there's something about, like, not having a crazy Hollywood budget and really just kind of, setting your mind to something and accomplishing it. And although you might not have the fanciest technology or lighting equipment, you can make something emotionally impactful. And I really think that's what makes the Blair Witch Project such a special movie, is because it's so minimalist. And I think when you look at the Blair Witch in the context of the time that it was released and the marketing behind it and just everything about it, there's a lot of incredible things to be said about it, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I discuss the film today. And I'm going to be talking about the Blair Witch Project. The Blair Witch Project is directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sánchez. In October of 1994, three student filmmakers disappeared in the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland, while shooting a documentary. A year later, their footage was found. So I was super excited to revisit this. I love this movie, and I have seen it a numerous amount of times. And every time I watch this movie, there's a lot of discourse about this online now. And I feel like a lot of younger horror fans like to come out and say, it's not scary, nothing happens. It's just people going around the woods lost. And what I will say is, this movie is like viscerally terrifying to me. There's something about the idea of, lack of technology. You don't have GPS. You don't have a lot of the things that you have now. You had a map, you lose it. There's this thing you're trying to look into that is horrifically evil, that could possibly exist, might not, but you're constantly looking over your shoulder. You're in the middle of nowhere with no one to help you. And this film does such an incredible job at conveying hopelessness and really sort of showcasing what, being isolated and alone with no safety net looks like. And this movie, like I said, it is viscerally terrifying to me, and I'm going to talk about it when I break the movie down for you today. So we're jumped in this movie. It's October of 1994, and we have three characters that we are introduced to, and that is Heather, Mike, and Josh. And the three of them together are creating a documentary about the Blair Witch and her association with Rustin Parr, who was a hermit that was living in the middle of the woods, who abducted and murdered 7 children. And they're going around this community, they're interviewing members of the community. And I'm always so sucked in at the beginning of the movie because those on the street kind of interviews, they all feel like real people. So as you're watching it, it's like you don't really have to suspend your disbelief, because it really just feels like they're talking to real people and that this is an experience that's actually happening. And of course, they decide that they're going to travel into the woods to try to, find this location and do their own investigation into the Blair Witch and this entire situation. And of course, they get out there in the middle of the woods, they have a map, and eventually they get lost. And as they are in the middle of the woods, they start to see and hear weird things, and they feel that they are being stalked. And it starts to get progressively worse and worse. And the film is just watching the scenario of these three people play out in front of you, and how it progressively spirals more and more into insanity. So like I said, I think this movie is remarkable, and there are a lot of reasons as to why. And I want to kind of talk first about the ingenious nature of the marketing of this movie. When this came out, they portrayed it as completely real. They told people that this actually happened, that this was footage they found. This thing was made on like a micro budget. They made it for like $60,000, and it ended up making like 280 million in the box office because people were so incredibly interested. And I think that's a testament to really incredible marketing. And I love that about this movie. But I think outside of the marketing elements, there are so many things that make this work so well. For starters, the three actors in this movie feel like real people, and that's what works so incredibly well. Their relationships feel natural, their reactions to situations feel natural, and there are so many moments. There is a scene in particular that it sticks out to me as one of the greatest scenes in a horror movie ever, and it's when Heather takes the camera and she points it on herself, and she essentially is talking directly in the camera and apologizing to her own parents and the parents of the guys that are out there with her, and essentially like taking accountability for the whole situation, and literally finishes it with like, we're all going to die out here. And there's something about it that, like, the vulnerability of that situation, and essentially being like, hey, we were doing this thing, we had all this camera equipment, but like I might not ever see the people I love again. And slowly seeing like all the people in this party sort of come to terms with like, we might not actually get back home. There's this level of hopelessness that I think is just really, sometimes people try to achieve this in movies and it doesn't work, but there's something about the performances in this. It is completely and totally believable to me. And it's honestly like kind of visceral how much it impacts me when I watch it. Like there's so many moments that it just really catches me off guard, and that I'm always so incredibly impressed with how amazing the actors are. Obviously, it's found footage. There's a lot of shaky cam, VHS camcorder footage. They also switched to 16 millimeter because they're shooting it for a documentary. But I think there's something very raw and real about the way that this looks that's almost uncomfortable. I think that, you know, a lot of times now found footage can look really clean. We have better camera equipment and things that we can use now. But there's something about this movie and like the raw grittiness of it that I think adds to the, you know, overwhelming impact. I also like the subtlety of the things that are happening to the characters because it feels more realistic. It's not like something's going to jump out at you in the middle of the woods every single time. You would just be running as fast as you can to get out of there, but it's like little things showing up outside of their tent or things hanging off of a tree. Those things, it's horrifying because it's like there's someone stalking us. And I think the way that the directors knew how to build up that level of tension and suspense for the audience is one of the things that makes it such an incredibly compelling piece of filmmaking. And the third act in this, everybody knows about the end of this film if they've seen it or if you're invested in the horror community at all. And I think there's something very incredible about just kind of cutting it off like that. It's like, okay, you were investigating this evil thing. Well, it probably exists. And then it's like, let that sit with the audience. You don't need like a big closure moment. You don't need any of that. I think that ending, it's one of the horror endings that really sort of sticks with me and that I've thought about for years after I watched it the first time. And I think the fact that this thing is so simple on the surface, but that it's executed in a way that's so incredibly brilliant. And it's something that every time I come back to, I'm like, well, I know exactly what's going to happen in every moment of the movie. Will it still work for me? And it does. Every single time I watch this, it works for me. I think it's so incredibly important to horror. I think it's one of the most important horror films ever made. And I know there's a lot of people that aren't as scared by it anymore. And I just think people have a harder time immersing themselves in movies because I think this situation is so horrifying. To think about being in the middle of nowhere and being lost, like my anxiety just gets to such an extreme degree. I'm like, I don't ever want to deal with something like that. And I just think this movie's amazing. I will watch it year after year after year, and I'd recommend you do the same if you've never seen it. So if you've seen the Blair Witch Project, do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was incredible. One of my personal favorite films, and it's iconic in found footage. It really sort of set up the genre for as much success as it's had over the years. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.